Okay, so amazing to be here today. I feel like I need to start by saying I feel like I need to start by saying thank you and maybe an apology to those of you sat on the floor at the front today, but thank you so much for being here. My name is Hannah Davis and I am the head of our data academy at ADMIRAL, and ADMIRAL is a large motor insurer in the UK, but we also have a few other products, and I'll give you a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of us and what we do too. I want to talk you through today the journey that we've taken in starting to understand what people mean in terms of change and transformation and culture, and specifically our journey in terms of data culture, building the data academy that I love so much and we'll talk to you a bit about today, but give you some really tangible points that hopefully no matter where you are on your journey, you can take with you and push into play in the organisation that you're a part of today. So a little bit about me. My name's Hannah. I've worked in data probably most of my career. I started as an analyst, became an academic, and went straight back into actually working hands-on with data. You'd probably think that started because I really love numbers, and that's totally true, but also because I always asked why, and I always apologized to my parents and my teachers because I was never happy without knowing the total ins and outs, and probably makes me a great analyst, makes me a great head of data academy, but also hopefully makes me a great chartered mathematician. So when I started my role, I was really surrounded by lots of men, and I can see lots of you here today. And I think that one of the things I'm most passionate is about how we get more women and more diverse teams through data and tech. And so you'll see a touch and a flavour of that in the work that I do and the work that I've created as the Data Academy. But also I'd encourage you all to think about the ways in which you can help our teams become more diverse. You are all role models to whoever you meet today and through this exhibition and through the careers that you have. So please think about doing that for better and for good. That's something I'd really hope you take away from this. In my work and in lots of what I do, I get to talk all of the time about people, culture, data fluency, and apologies today maybe for the enthusiasm that will come across as I go through the talk. So let's get started. In building this talk and thinking about what I wanted to take you through, it was almost the journey, the story of how we thought about transformation and people, how that led us into really capitalizing on what our data culture could be, how we then created the Data Academy and what it looks like today, and then hopefully some building blocks, whether they be square blocks, circular blocks, triangular blocks, or maybe something totally different for you that you could take and use to think about culture, people, and data in general in your organizations. So, transformation and people. A little quick show of hands. How many of you are either in an organization today or in a role today where you have a change program to change tech, to transform, maybe move to the cloud, maybe change the tech stack that you're using? How many of you? Yeah, thought so. Okay, and how many of those have educational programs built alongside them to really leverage what's happening, to transform and change, to think about people? Okay, great, amazing. I can see some of the Admiral hands up as well, which is a good sign. We'd be in a terrible position if we didn't. So, where we started, we said we've been an insurer for 30 years, we've got legacy data stacks, we've got data and transformation happening and change happening across the business. But we tried this. We set up a data and analytics project. We moved about 200 people up into the cloud. We said, look at these great tools, look at them, go use them, it'll be fantastic. And some of them did. And the rest of the business said, what about us? How do we do this? How do we become part of this? And so then, without any spoilers, I guess, or maybe a few spoilers, we created the Data Academy, and our adoption of those tools increased by 350%. So a testament to the way that we've done it, but it may look different for you. So some of the key things that we really thought about were, how do we make sure that we're not just showing fancy tech, that we're not just showing people new ways of doing things, changing their jobs, getting them to move from analysis and getting hands-on with the data into self-serving. How do we think about the path that they're now going to take through their journey and their career with us to make sure that at every touch point they can be trained, they have at their disposal a place where they can understand more and learn, that they can share, that they can become a part of something bigger, And in an organisation the size of ours, with about 20 different data teams, 4 UK entities, and about 700 people, that ability to come together and share is hugely important. It's probably one of the things I'm most proud of in our journey. We know that people are the ones that ultimately affect our culture. Each of you is responsible in part for the culture that your organisation has today and will have tomorrow and will build for the future. So how do we support that? How do we think about that in a way that we then think about what do we need to enable that? What do we need to build the culture that we want? How do we get people to think about data culture? And you may be really familiar, and I'll try and stay away from them, the real buzzwords of, oh, we want to be data driven, we want to be data first, we want to be data led, we want to use data everywhere. But really coming through and thinking about what does that mean here? What does it mean for us? Who are we? What do we want to be? And how do we want our people to use data? So when we started this initiative of let's think about moving to the cloud and let's think about it again, what do we need? We started to think about the thing that always, I guess, made Admiral, and we'll all talk about it in different ways if you've ever worked there or used it as a customer. But we always say that people are at the heart of everything that we do. And so we stripped it all back and we went right back to the beginning, the bits that made us us, and said, what do we need to do? And so in building our data strategy, we started with our foundational enablers, and in there you'll see things like assurance and enablement and data quality and data management and everything that you expect to see. But you also see right at the bottom in that middle segment a box that says culture, people and excellence. Because for us that's really the heart of what we wanted to start from. So our change programs now not only affect change in our IT and tech space, but also have with them a change process that sits within our data academy. So, in our story, we know we want to affect change, we know that we want to include our people, we know that we want to think about excellence, we want to support them. We needed to understand what we wanted from our data culture. We needed to understand if we could go all the way back and start with nothing, what would that culture be? How would we want to describe Admiral and its data culture to each of you, to the people that work for us, to the customers that use us, to the people that we talk about in terms of our branding? And for us it came down to a few things, and you'll see the tie of people all the way through this, but we wanted to make sure that everybody understood the value of data, whether they were a contact center agent on the phone to our customers or they were our CEO. And we wanted it to be something that they could use daily to improve business outcomes. So not just everybody has a data skill pathway that they can go through, but that we apply work-based learning, that they then are using that learning that they have through us to make sure that they are able to make a business decision. We have great people in Admiral who forever will tell me that they just know. They just know that something is true. They just know that that's the schedule they need to work with. They just know that this product will be successful. They just know that this marketing campaign won't work. But actually getting them to find the data, use our data teams, think about it, and then use that data to form insights and actions, really important. We started with this concept of data culture within our data teams, but hugely important for the world that we live in today, and the way that people, I think, view and challenge and think about data, is that data culture for us is for everyone. It's not just for our data teams, and so we think about fluency, and I don't use the word literacy on purpose here, but we talk about data fluency as well as data training. So we have two broad aspects, one for our data people and our data community, and one for the rest of the business, to really make sure that we are not just thinking about one aspect. Data culture really is about every role, and it's about making sure they're equipped to do their job. So within this, we have different elements. We have horizontals of training concepts, we have verticals of roles within data, but we also have data skills pathways, and we call them data skills for all, and they are exactly that. They're for everyone. They're from our heads of departments to our contact center agents And if you've never thought about doing this in terms of a talent pipeline and finding those data curious and those data savvy people that you've never even realized have those skills, they're a great way to think about who you might reskill in the future. And then finally, it would never be fair of us to say that data is a team sport and then only ever consider data people. And so the network that we increasingly build within Admiral is to make sure that really when we approach data culture, we're not a single team that's trying to kind of champion the way, but we spend lots of time building networks, spending time with our stakeholders, making sure that everybody who needs a seat at the table is at the table, and making sure that our table is not a finite size, because as things change, as we go through a different step, as our journey matures and continues, that table grows and shrinks in order to make sure we always have the right people in the room. So nobody's forgotten about, nothing's ever missed, hopefully, and we are strongly building towards that path. So I have described to you the step that got us to why should we start, what's going on, what's our change initiative. I've told you this is what I want our data culture to be. And then we had almost a junction, if you like. We could have spent months and months and months building, piloting, testing, something that we'd spent months working on. And actually I came across this quote from Walt Disney, who said, "The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing." And I would urge you, if you take nothing else from this presentation, other than maybe my love of Disney, that you should think about doing enough to get started. I think we talk about MVPs in terms of products all of the time, but how many of you do enough to get started and do it, as opposed to trying to get that extra 10 or 15% before you even get going? So we really sat down and said, okay, we are just going to start. Where should we start? And lo and behold, I got to talk now about the bit that drives my day to day, that is really the heart of this kind of initiative of how we build data culture, and that is our Data Academy. It was formed as a complete concept in the form of our data strategy, and then came to life probably over the last 18 months, but has been active within our community for the last 12 months. And luckily today I get to bring some of my colleagues who are part of our initiatives here, and unfortunately for me they're watching, so I'm sure I'll get some critical feedback later. The Data Academy for us touches on almost everything I've talked to you about today. It really is about making sure that we have thought about every part. And what I would say here is, you may well be in an organization that wants a Data Academy. You may be in an organization that has one. You may be in an organization that goes, God, I don't think I need anything that looks like this. And that is totally fine. But I'm hoping, through talking you through some of these initiatives, that you can pull and flex on some of the things that you think would be useful in your space. I told you just now how broad our data community is. And so we always focus on people, and hopefully you see that, but we wanted to make sure that we had a space and a place for all of those people to come together. And we wanted that not just to be for social things, fun as they are, and is a great pillar in the Admiral culture, but we wanted to make sure they had a place to share, that they could share the best practices, that we could learn a mistake that had happened in a previous data team or a previous initiative and move forward with it. And so we set about, the first thing that we did was make a newsletter, and we said, do you know what's going on in data? And everybody said no, not got a clue. And so we said, right, here we go, here's 10 pages, here's some stories, here's our initiatives, here's what's coming, here's why, here's where you sit in this landscape, here's a way to recognize people's praise them, recognize their contributions to our data. And that's been something that has continued throughout. It's changed, it's iterated. It doesn't look like it did back then, but that was one of the first things. And that, again, leans to that, just do enough. At that point, that was enough. We run events by the community, for the community. It's never really just us saying, you need this and you need that. We're very humble in our approach and say, if you want something, we will make it happen. And it's about making sure that we get to this world of self-sufficiency. I don't ever want to run the community hands-on. I want it to be somewhere that flourishes itself. And I think we're on the way there, not quite there yet. Then it wouldn't be a Data Academy without a focus on training and development. And so right in that middle is how we think about training and development. And I've touched on this a little bit already. It's not just training for data people, whilst that is a huge portion of what we do. It's also about thinking of fluency. It's also about thinking of programs to help diversity. One of the first programs we initiated was a program to recognize and uplift our rising stars in data. It was about making sure that, as lots of us did, we lost great talent after COVID. People had all of these skills, they moved on, they wanted more. We said, you know what we need to do? We need to think about how do we make sure that people want to stay. And so we invested in them. We gave them a 9-month program, We gave them mentors, we gave them training, we gave them access to events like this, we gave them pathways to learn, we gave them support. We built it out totally for them to think about how we kept them. And right now, after 4 cohorts of that program, there's about 85% of them have been promoted into their roles, and we've kept that 85%. So for our stickiness, it's a real great talent initiative for us. But that's not enough. We talked about diversity earlier. Diversity programs, hugely important too, and they sit in there. I think probably the one I've missed in the middle, and one that I think is hugely important in the way that we have built. I have a background in academia. I've built programs, I've built degrees, I've had them accredited. I wanted to make sure that we could do a bit of both. We could reinvent something to make it really admiralized, if you like. We've always loved doing bespoke training. But where it doesn't work to do so, we'll never be leading the space in ML. We'll never be, forging the path in generative AI. So where it pays to pay for content, we do that. So we really flex our skills, but also the needs to think about our model of internal and external things. So this isn't an academy that just partners, but it's also not an academy where we train everything either. And that mix is a hugely important thing to think about. And then finally, in that data culture and brand, I talked about data fluency and it being for everyone, and hopefully the point here is really well kind of received, but it is about everyone, and data fluency means different things to lots of different people. Sometimes it's about removing taught fear. Sometimes people say, I can't use data, my goodness, I never did maths. I didn't do a STEM degree, I don't know how to do this. I'd say all of you, probably right now, if you've booked on the app, or you've ordered something online, or you've traveled by public transport today to get here, or yesterday, you've all used data, and that's a message really well received in a data conference. But for some people who are really scared about it, it's not enough to say, you've done it, you've used it, don't worry about it. So sometimes it's about that, sometimes it's a whole pathway, because we know we're going to reskill that talent into a data role. And then it would be a neglecting of me to say that we also need to think about how we attract people into the business, how we retain great talent, but also how do we feature in the world of data. And so obviously opportunities like this are a great way to do that. Now, I said right at the start, and I think I'm probably getting towards time, that I really wanted to give you some time to think about things that you could take away with you. And so these are the ways that we build data culture. Now, I said at the start, your blocks may be different. My blocks probably aren't square. I'd love to think that they were. But here are some ways that I think you could go into your organization or your role, or think about the future and really think about how to get started. And I want to make it really clear that whilst I've numbered them and they're kind of sequential, you may join already knowing your people. You may already have that support. And so you could be at any part of this journey, but hopefully, if I can't give you the blocks to build everything, I can give you the next step that you could think about in your active day-to-day. So, first of all, support. I think you need to really think about who are the people that want what you want, and find them. For me, some of my biggest data ambassadors don't live in my data teams. Our deputy CEO and CEO, we're very lucky, are huge data advocates. If I take a step back into what ADMIRAL is, we're an insurer. For the last 30 years, data has really been everything that we've ever used. We've never really needed to know anything different. It's been claim costs, pricing, That's the heart of our business, and so we were really fortunate that those people understood data. But some of them sit in our marketing team. Some of them are my recruitment colleagues. Some of them are in our people analytics space. Some people are sat across the business and are our customer loyalty champions. And they are the people that can get you momentum. They're the people that can almost see the world that you're trying to work towards. They're the people that are fighting the same good fight as you. And so I would find them, talk to them, bring them along to things like this, host data conferences at work if you like, or data immersion sessions, and get them on that journey with you. If you don't have a top level exec suite that are really bought into the uses of data, or you're on the way to that, please start there, because when they love it, lots of people will love it too. Great leaders bring people with them. Next of all, and I touched on this earlier, doing enough. If you can find those use cases that drive value, that can almost go end to end, even with minimal input, so your MVPs, so something like, people don't know what's going on in data, we want more people to understand, we'll build a newsletter. Or even, we have a problem with attrition, so how do we get people to stay with us, how do we nurture great talent? And so we have a development program for rising stars in data. Being able to do something end-to-end, total product world here, being able to start something, find your MVP, deliver it out, get value, show the rest of the business what's going on, great place to start. And that could look like lots of different things. I've mentioned a few, but that could be a pilot for a literacy program or a fluency program. It could be initiatives that sit somewhere else. It could be our 350% increased user adoption on our tooling suite in the cloud. It could be lots of different things. Once you've got your use cases, it's really difficult to do anything if you don't know where you're starting. And so thinking about measurement early on so that you can measure what's really important and show people. It would be terrible if we weren't data-driven in our approach or using data to make decisions here. But thinking about how do we get to a place where we know what it looks like today. We can show that that initiative, that program has really impacted the business. So tracking who's become a senior, who's been promoted, who's remained in the business. It doesn't need to be perfect, and I think that's really important here. I could have spent probably the last 18 months getting some great KPIs, finding the right data, building out tracking suites, building out dashboards, but at certain points, that was never, it would have been too much. I would have invested time in the wrong place. So knowing what my initiative was trying to do, getting the measurements I needed to show its value, and then being able to show the progress was the way forward for that space. Next, iteration. You could call it agile, you could call it any of the above, but going from that MVP into a more perfect state. For every program or training course we develop, we build it, we pilot it, and then we start thinking about documentation, stabilizing it, and then retiring it when it's done. Thinking about agile processes, we have scrum boards for those, being able to almost do it as lean as you possibly can, and thinking about test and learn, fail fast, outfail your competition, as Stephen Bartlett would say in his new Diary of a CEO book. It's all about making sure that you are constantly fighting for value, constantly changing your approach. And our newsletter, I reckon, the first thing we did is probably change about 7 times on the whole, and still will change again. So making sure that you're constantly able to change, pivot, and that the people surrounding you can do that is hugely important. And then I wouldn't be here doing a talk about culture or telling you how passionate I am about people if I didn't think about the team and that collaborative approach, that ability to say, I want to do something great and I want you to come with me. That ability to say that data is for everyone, and so regardless of your role, regardless of your tenure, regardless of your degree, regardless of your background, that you become a part of our team, that you become a person in our data world. That collaboration and that approach to people is hugely important. Half of the people that I have on our fluency programs today, I don't think would be there if they didn't feel included and accepted in the world that they live in to be a part of something bigger, but they all want it. And so think about your data people that maybe aren't from STEM backgrounds and aren't your typical data person, and looking around this room, God, I don't know that I could ever explain what a typical data person is because we're all so different. But making sure that when you're thinking about culture, that you are recognizing that it's about everyone. And so, in summary, not bad, in summary, your data culture strategy may not contain anything that looks like an academy. You may only ever think about bringing people together. You may only ever think about training and development, or you might only ever think about data fluency or how you brand your data teams. But really, we are thinking about making sure, or I urge you to make sure that you are not just thinking about new fancy tools, that you're not just pushing out tech and expecting the masses to come, but really that you are integralizing people, skills and value in your approach. And if you don't already have as part of your data strategy an element around culture or excellence or something around people, I really would urge you to rethink that and think about how you could get to that stage, because it is something that I think will change the strategy that you have in your business today. It wouldn't be change and transformation without people. I'm sure you've all seen the transformation curve of who adopts early, who become your kind of passive people, who almost fall out of your organization because they don't want change. Being able to think about it from a people approach, hugely important. And the final takeaway that I'll maybe give you today is that culture is formed from behaviors, and behaviors are the habits that your people have. If they are used to doing something, you need to change their habits, and you won't ever be able to think about culture without going all the way back to the people that bring it and build it and are it, and it's all of you. So thank you very much today. Here's my details. I'm happy to spend some time afterwards, but thank you very much.